The dust motes danced in the anemic light, filtering through the grimy windows of my childhood home, each particle a tiny, shimmering ghost of a memory. 30 years had passed since I last truly lived within these walls, and now, at 30, I was back, sifting through the remains of a life that was no longer mine to share. My parents were gone, taken by the quiet cruelty of time and illness, leaving behind a house overflowing with echoes and forgotten things. The attic had been a nightmare of moth-eaten clothes and yellowed photo albums. The garage, a monument to my father's half-finished projects. But it was the crawl space, tucked away beneath the house, that filled me with a peculiar dread. It had always been a place of shadows and secrets, a realm I hadn't dared to explore since I was a child, a place where a certain imaginary friend once resided, Mr. Styx. The name itself felt like a whisper from a forgotten dream, a childhood fancy my parents had indulged with amused smiles. He was my confidant, my shadow companion, the silent listener to all my 6-year-old woes. He lived, I insisted, in the cool, damp darkness of the crawl space, a hidden kingdom only I could access. My parents thought it was cute, a harmless phase, until it wasn't. I remember Mrs. Gable from 2 houses down, a woman who always wore a scarf, even in summer, and kept her curtains drawn. Mr. Styx, in his quiet, insistent way, told me she wasn't sick, as my mother often said. He told me she was hiding from a man who used to knock on her door at night, a man with a missing front tooth and a strange metallic smell. I repeated this to my mother innocently at the dinner table. My mother, usually so calm, dropped her fork. A few weeks later, Mrs. Gable moved away abruptly, leaving a for sale sign that stayed up for months. The neighbors whispered about a restraining order, about a past she couldn't escape. My mother looked at me differently after that, her smile strained. Then there were the Millers. Mr. Miller, a jovial man who always had candy for the neighborhood kids, but whose eyes held a peculiar, unsettling glint. Mr. Styx told me about his special collection in the shed behind his house, things he shouldn't have, things that came alive in the dark. I told my father Mr. Miller had a secret room where he kept scary dolls that watched him sleep. My father chuckled, but the very next week there were police cars at the Miller's house, flashing blue and red against the twilight. The whispers flew like wildfire: illegal firearms, stolen antiques, a history of shady dealings. Mr. Miller was gone by morning, and his shed was emptied, its contents confiscated. My parents didn't laugh about Mr. Styx anymore. They sat me down, their faces grim, their voices low. "You have to stop talking to Mr. Styx, honey," my mother had pleaded, her eyes wide with a fear I couldn't comprehend then. "He's not real. He's just your imagination, and sometimes imagination can be dangerous." My father, usually so firm, was unusually gentle. "He's telling you things, son, things you shouldn't know. It's not right. You need to promise us you won't talk to him anymore. Not ever." I promised. I was a child, and their fear was palpable, a heavy blanket that smothered my playful fantasy. The crawl space became forbidden, a place I avoided, even in my thoughts. Mr. Styx faded, or so I convinced myself, into the realm of childish things, a peculiar quirk of my developing mind. The secrets he whispered, however, never truly left me. They lingered, unsettling and unexplained, like persistent shadows at the edge of my memory. Now, decades later, standing in the musty air of my parents' empty home, the crawlspace beckoned. It was the last untouched frontier, a dark maw beneath the floorboards of the living room, accessible through a small, latched door near the fireplace. I knelt, the wood groaning softly under my weight as I unlatched it. A rush of cool, damp air, smelling of earth and old wood, greeted me. I grabbed a powerful LED flashlight from my toolbox, clicked it on, and peered into the abyss. It was smaller than I remembered, or perhaps I was simply larger. The ceiling was low, forcing me to crouch as I moved. The ground was packed dirt, uneven and cold. Cobwebs, thick and ancient, draped from the exposed joists like tattered lace. I swept the beam across the space, illuminating forgotten tools, old paint cans, and a few dusty boxes my parents had evidently deemed unworthy of an attic space. My heart began to pound, a slow, heavy drum against my ribs, as the beam landed on something tucked away in a far dark corner, half buried under a thin layer of dust. A wooden crate, not a storage crate, but a small handcrafted box, crudely assembled from rough-hewn planks. My breath hitched. This wasn't something my parents would have made, and it definitely wasn't something they would have stored down here. I crawled towards it, the flashlight beam fixed on the box. As I got closer, a sense of profound unease settled over me, a chilling premonition that this wasn't just old junk. It was something else, something connected. My fingers, trembling slightly, brushed away the dust. The lid wasn't hinged, but simply rested on top. I lifted it, and the flashlight beam plunged into the darkness within. And there they were, dozens of them, intricately carved stick figures, each no more than 6 or 7 inches tall, crafted from what looked like twigs and small branches. They were not crude, childish efforts. These were detailed, almost lifelike in their simplicity. Each figure had distinct features: a tiny nose, a faint mouth, rudimentary limbs. Some wore what appeared to be carved clothing. One had a tiny carved hat, another a flowing twig-like dress. But it was their eyes that truly froze me. Every single figure had its eyes scratched out. Not just gouged, but violently, meticulously erased, leaving jagged holes or deep, disturbing indentations. My blood ran cold. A wave of nausea washed over me, a sickening lurch in my stomach. I reached in, my fingers brushing against the smooth, cold wood of the figures. I pulled one out. It was a man, thin and slightly stooped, with a tiny carved mustache. His eyes were twin craters. A memory surfaced, unbidden and sharp. Mr. Henderson, the retired mailman who lived across the street, so always hunched over his garden, always meticulously trimming his mustache. I pulled out another. A woman, plump, with a small, round bun on her head. Her eyes, too, were obliterated. Mrs. Peterson, the neighborhood baker, famous for her apple pies and her neatly coiffed hair. My mind raced, tumbling through the names and faces of the people who had lived on our street, Greenbrier Lane, all those years ago. My hands shook as I started to lay them out on the dusty ground, one by one, a macabre collection. Mr. Miller, Mrs. Gable, Mr. Henderson, Mrs. Peterson, the Davies, the Changs, the O'Malleys, every single family, every single house, each figure a chilling, eyeless effigy. The meticulous craftsmanship, the sheer number of them, spoke of an immense, disturbing patience. This wasn't a child's game. This was something else entirely. A cold dread began to seep into my bones, colder than the damp earth beneath me. Mr. Sticks. The name echoed in my head, no longer a childish fancy, but a terrible, suffocating truth. He wasn't imaginary. He was real. And these figures, these were his collection. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. I remembered the secrets, not just the big ones, like Mr. Miller's hidden arsenal or Mrs. Gable's past. There were smaller things. The way Mr. Sticks told me Mrs. Peterson sometimes cried alone in her kitchen late at night, whispering about a son she'd lost. The way he mentioned Mr. Henderson's secret poker games in his shed, where he lost more than just money. Things that were too specific, too personal for a child to simply invent. Things that, at the time, I had no way of verifying, but which, looking back, always seemed to align with hushed adult conversations I overheard. He wasn't whispering secrets to me. He was whispering secrets through me. I was his conduit, his unwitting mouthpiece, his little oracle of suburban darkness. The thought made me gag. I dropped the figure I was holding. It landed with a soft thud on the dirt. I scanned the remaining figures in the box, my breath catching in my throat. There were so many, one for every family on Greenbrier Lane, except one, my family, my parents, me. Was there a figure for us? For me? The thought sent a fresh wave of ice through my veins. The box was nearly empty now, only a few figures left. I counted them, my hands shaking so violently I almost dropped the flashlight. Three figures remaining. The Martins, 2 houses down. The figure was a young couple holding hands. Their eyes, of course, were scratched out. The last 2 figures. My fingers closed around them, pulling them out. One was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, with a slight tilt to his head, my father. His eyes were gone, 2 empty sockets staring into the gloom. The other was a woman, smaller, with a gentle curve to her form. My mother. Her eyes, too, were obliterated. A terrible cold stillness settled over me. There were no more figures in the box, just the 2 of them, my parents. But where was mine? The question screamed in my head, a silent, horrifying shriek. I frantically searched the box again, feeling along the bottom, scraping my fingers against the rough wood. Nothing, just dust and splinters. Then I looked at the 2 figures in my hand, my parents, both of them gone now, both of them, their eyes scratched out. A chilling thought like a shard of ice pierced through my mind. Mr. Sticks didn't just collect secrets, he collected something else. He knew what would happen. He knew what had happened. The air in the crawlspace grew heavy, thick with an unseen presence. The faint smell of damp earth was suddenly overlaid with something else, something subtly metallic, like old blood, and something else, faint and sweet, like decaying wood. A sound, so soft it could have been the settling of the old house, echoed from the far reaches of the crawlspace, deeper in the darkness beyond the reach of my flashlight. A faint, rhythmic scratching, like tiny claws on wood. My heart leapt into my throat. It was the sound I remembered from childhood, the sound that would precede Mr. Sticks's whispers, the sound I had dismissed as mice or the wind. It wasn't the wind, it wasn't mice, it was him. The scratching grew slightly louder, closer. A shiver of pure, unadulterated terror ran down my spine. He was still here. After all these years, he was still here in the dark, and he was still collecting. And I had just stumbled upon his trophy room. I scrambled backward, dropping the figures of my parents, not caring where they landed. My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation, anything to dispel the growing dread. Urban legend, creepypasta come to life, a cursed object, the box itself, drawing out the worst in people? Or was it something far more primal, a cryptid, a shadow entity, feeding on the hidden ugliness of humanity? The scratching stopped. The silence that followed was worse, heavier, filled with an invisible pressure. I could feel eyes on me, not the empty sockets of the stick figures, but something ancient and malevolent. Then a whisper, so faint, so delicate, it could have been my own mind playing tricks. But it was there, a voice like dry leaves skittering across pavement, like bone on stone. You came back. It was the same voice I remembered, the voice of Mr. Sticks, a voice that had once been comforting, then disturbing, and now utterly terrifying. You came back for your secrets. My breath hitched. My secrets? What secrets did I have that he knew? What had he been observing all these years from the dark confines of this forgotten space? I felt a cold breath on the back of my neck, even though I was pressed against the rough earth, facing the entrance. He wasn't in front of me. He was behind me, or everywhere. I pushed myself up, my muscles screaming in protest, and scrambled back towards the crawlspace door. My hands fumbled with the latch, my fingers clumsy with fear. I could feel the presence now, a chilling weight pressing down on me, suffocating me. The air grew colder, so cold I could almost see my breath. You kept mine too, the whisper continued, closer now, right beside my ear, sending a jolt of pure terror through me. The ones you never told anyone. He knew. He knew about the things I had done, the thoughts I had harbored, the hidden shames I carried. He wasn't just a collector of neighborhood gossip. He was a collector of souls, and I had been his first, his best, his most enduring project. I finally found the latch, my trembling fingers closing around the cold metal. I pulled the door shut with a desperate, guttural cry, slamming it closed and fumbling with the hook. The darkness was absolute now, pressing in on me from all sides. I leaned against the door, gasping for air, my heart threatening to explode from my chest. The house was silent again. Too silent. I stood there for a long time, leaning against the crawlspace door, the cold seeping through the wood, through my clothes, into my very bones. The figures, the secrets, the chilling confirmation that my childhood imaginary friend was a malevolent entity, a watcher, a whisperer of doom. It was all real. I left the house that day, leaving the box of figures in the crawlspace, leaving the history, the secrets, the chilling presence of Mr. Sticks behind. I locked the door, but I knew it was useless. Some doors, once opened, can never truly be shut. I never returned to that house. I sold it, sight unseen, to the first buyer who made an offer, never mentioning the crawlspace, never mentioning the box, never mentioning the whispers. I try to live my life, to forget. But sometimes, late at night, when the house is dark and quiet, I hear it, a faint, rhythmic scratching, and I know with a chilling certainty that Mr. Sticks isn't confined to a single crawlspace. He's everywhere, he's watching, and he's still collecting. because somewhere, deep in the dark, there's still a figure without eyes, and it's waiting for mine.
Thank you so much for sticking with me to the end. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you liked this video, please hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.